Not red, not blue, not white, not green, just gray. Just gray.
You are listening to The Gray Zone. I don't know why I say it like I'm introducing a Marvel Cinematic Movie Universe film or something like that, but it's terrifying. The Gray Zone. Frightened. Joined by my doppelganger, my twin brother, the very handsome, charming University of Alabama graduate, Bennett Thompson. What's up, Bennett?
I'm the organ donor, as he likes to call me, the handicapped lefty southpaw. But as we saw yesterday, there's some successful southpaws out there in college football, one of which we saw in person in Tua Tagovailoa, and I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about him. But
Jay Spivey's a lefty, too. It's amazing what you lefties can do. It really is. I'm proud of y'all, all of y'all.
There always needs to be a deep-voiced lefty on the podcast. Missy J.
I wish that were the case, but we've never done this before. I'm kind of terrified about how this is going to sound for the audience, if it's just going to sound like me talking to myself.
It could just sound like you talking to yourself.
Talking to myself?
Yourself.
All right, lefties are obviously good for something. How did you spend your week one of college football? I know the answer, but just say it for the podcast.
Gray, myself, and my father attended the Alabama-Duke game at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium here in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, which is where I call home. I love this town. I love this city. And we all had a fantastic day enjoying the first Saturday for us of college football and just seeing everybody and smelling the smells and the tailgating and being back in the thick of it and battling it out at least early with an ACC opponent in one of my favorite stadiums that I've ever seen. It's just a magnificent experience. If you've never been to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, find a way. Go to United game. They're always packed. It's always a lot of fun. Find your way for any of the games at the end of the season. It's just such a really cool, unique stadium and a really cool environment. It feels bigger than it is. It's towering. You can see the city through the skylights outside the bridge, and it's just a really awesome place to watch a sporting event.
Atlanta is an excellent sports city, isn't it? I love it here.
A lot of pride here, especially when the teams are winning, and United keeps winning, and the infectious nature of the positivity in this town for United is everywhere. You can see it.
United? You're talking about football?
The other football, yes, soccer to the wantons. But
gotta be honest, bro. There is no other football
here,
to me.
man.
I'm sorry. The other football to me is the NFL. Okay.
I hear you. And Greg can attest that I spoke a lot of United this weekend and just the passion that people have here in Atlanta. And
They do.
It's when you're in any major city, when you see a team doing well, the city really piles behind it, and never shown more clearly than with Atlanta right now. With the Braves doing well, the Braves are hot. That means the fans are hot. It's a really good time to be living here in Atlanta if you're a sports fan.
Lots of Falcons love, man. Tons of it. Yesterday even.
And again, in that stadium, just seeing how they've really decorated the entire place so professionally with United gear and Falcons pillars and just massive 30-foot photographs of Julio Jones doing what Julio Jones does, which is being a god at receiver. It's a really cool place to be, and it's a really cool spot and a great spot of this city that I call home.
You know, you brought up Julio Jones, and I remember watching him thinking, number one, yeah, he was kind of wasted a little bit at Alabama, but as a fan, I thought, we've never had a guy like that for sure, and probably never would. I don't know if any of these guys compare to Julio from top to bottom because he's so just strong and tall. But I tell you what, Alabama sure is rich at wide receiver with guys like Jalen Waddle and Jerry Jeudy and Miller Forrest.
Yeah, well, the tight ends had the early benefit of being two of Tua's touchdown passes.
Let's start there. So we went to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium yesterday to watch Alabama face off against Duke. It was a slow start. I was surrounded by people who did not seem overly thrilled to be there for an Alabama football game. I felt very much alone. Shout out to Brandy because I didn't feel alone with her there. But she was excited to see the Tide roll and not nervous.
It was nerve-wracking to begin with, to be sure.
It wasn't pretty football. I'll give you that.
It was, those first-game jitters that you see that makes week one so much of a nail-biter for all teams across the country. There's just that oil. You got to get that rust off and get into gameplay. It's not practice anymore, no matter how hard you practice. Getting on the field, especially a professional football stadium against a Power 5 team, and the amount of energy that Duke came out. And they did. They definitely seems to be energized, and they played focused.
I was
Especially
surprised, to be
early,
honest.
the momentum was moving towards them with the way that they were executing, and Alabama failing to do exactly that early, just making a couple mistakes, really killing some drives with a couple of penalties, and just not being able to get anything going. Duke controlled the play of field for much of the first quarter, if not the first half, but certainly the first quarter was going Duke's way. Everything stayed on their side of the 50, and they looked to, be presenting some type of a challenge where things just didn't really seem to get set. And then Tua found his way once they kind of got into a rhythm, started moving the ball a little bit better. They were going east-west a lot as opposed to north-south, really getting the ball to the edge and kind of escaping that early energy that Duke had to bring the pressure up front and really dive towards the middle of an inexperienced offensive line for Alabama. Sarkisian dialed up his playbook and does like he does. He got out quick passes and a lot of really short game to get the ball moving in the hands of, as you mentioned, these really talented wide receivers. This core of receivers is absolutely breathtaking. Everybody just has ridiculous speed. And that's why they're going to utilize the playbook in that way. It's kind of Steve Sarkisian's calling card. Get the ball into the hands of your playmakers, get it done quickly, and allow them in space if you see that opportunity to do what they do. And we saw it time and time again last night. Once it started in the second quarter, it only continued in the second half, where Judy's getting the ball on a short go, and he takes it another 20, 30 yards. Waddle did the same.
Jared Judy, same initials as Julio Jones.
That's right.
Very different looking guys, right? But man, I tell you what, I have a hard time suggesting Jerry Jeudy doesn't belong at the top of the Bolitnikoff Award list again this year. He's so much fun to watch, the way he jukes and moves, the way he makes things happen when you think, oh, he's just going to get tackled right there, and he turns it into 10 yards or a touchdown. He's a spectacle. I love Jerry Jeudy.
He's very difficult to tackle. We saw a number of missed tackles yesterday that you can't really call missed. The guy just has a way of getting through arm tackles. Even on the sidelines, he doesn't like to go down. He finds ways to escape. He had a couple of spin moves yesterday. His go rate is extreme. He just goes from 0 to incredible in just a matter of a blink of an eye, and he's gone. And that's what allows these guys to be able, with the talent like that, to really take advantage of 3 and 4 yard passes to the outside, get them in space, make one guy miss, and then it's really impossible for a defensive back trying to catch up. You're not going to get him if he's got an angle, and that goes for Waddle too. Again, Henry Ruggs, we know we saw him previously a lot
And
last year.
Devontae Smith back from an injury last year against Missouri.
Everybody kind of got their touches. You can see there's a lot of promise there going through the season. It looks to continue along that line with the playbook. We know Sarkisian likes to do this. This is not handing things over.
I still feel like
to
I don't
anybody.
know a lot about Steve Sarkisian.
We know that's been a staple of what he likes to do. Get the ball into the hand of somebody who's an elite playmaker, can really make those moves, and get it to him quickly. Tua is really good. He has a quick release, and he can read. And if he sees a cushion big enough for any of these guys where he knows they'll be able to take advantage, that's the call that's going to be made. He'll make that execution. He knows how to throw those balls where the receivers can catch them in stride, and once they get going, they're really difficult to stop. Again, we've seen it time and time again with these guys, and we saw it more and more yesterday, especially with Judy. As we mentioned, Bolitnikoff winner from last year. That's a big reason why. He knows how to operate in space. He can take off. He knows how to run routes. And he's really difficult to tackle for a guy that, Julio obviously looks like a specimen. Big, tall guy. When he was running fast, it didn't look like he was really running that fast, but he just looks like a physical god. And Judy's got that wide receiver mold. He's tall. He's thin. But gosh, he's got the jets, and he really is difficult. With an arm tackle, you're not going to get him. And if he gets a step on you, he's going to find a way to juke your body balance off. He's going to spin move you. He's going to make somebody miss, continue to make plays. Again, we saw that once they made contact. There was a lot of push down the field from the receivers by themselves without a lot of help. And then when they did get help, that's another 6, 7, 8 yards. And it really started to pay off in the later stages of the game. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was fun to watch the ball move around. I think Tua ended up with another 4-touchdown game to, if not tie a school record, and 300-plus yards. A fantastic effort on him after what looked to be a really shaky start, just getting the dust off, kicking the cobwebs, and once it got going, really felt like things were going in the right direction.
How'd you feel about Duke's band coming out there and spelling D-U-M-B? That caught me off guard.
This may be something other people have known. And
Duke University Marching Band. I get it.
I went to the game that Alabama played up there at Duke University a few years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, And I don't remember that. I know we were there for kickoff and pregame, and I really don't remember them spelling the word dumb. That may be new. It's certainly not a new anagram.
I love
for them,
bands. They spelled it really well.
They did.
They looked really tight out there.
But then Alabama's band comes out there and just spells a giant A, and you can kind of tell that the Duke band, if they'd have piled into that A, wouldn't have filled half of it. It's a pretty paltry comparison as far as bands go. Not to say that that does anything, but hey, I'll not forget Duke spelling the word dumb.
It's important
on the field.
It's an important part of the pageantry, right? And we don't really ever talk about bands. More to the point, with all this coverage, right? We get to watch every game. We get to watch anybody play any college football, dude. We live in such a great time to do that, but all of them exclude the marching bands completely, unless they do something atrocious, so to speak, right? And so they bring out a score or, a sort of a middle finger to another team like a rival. It's the only time you see any of it on live air. Or I say live air, it's never even live.
The only thing I can think of that you can see is when they dot the I at the Ohio State University. When the I is dotted, everybody knows that tradition. But you're right. I mean, as much as the pageantry of college football is predicated on that, the band, the sound, the cheerleaders, and you don't really get to see a lot of that on television. Certainly not to that where you'd know that. As much college football as we watch, I never knew that I don't know if it's new or not. I'm going to have to do some research, but I certainly won't forget seeing the Duke marching band. First things first, spelling the word dumb in people.
And they spelled it towards the Alabama side too, right?
Yeah, it was pointed towards the broadcast booth, so it's clear as day. We were on the opposite side, but it was easy to see exactly what they spelled. And we all kind of scratched our heads and thought, is this a smart school joke? And we know Duke's a good school, and then it all made sense. And I'm sure that they understand the irony therein as well, and that's probably why they liked it.
I just wasn't prepared for my first thing to see on the field was dumb, spelled out by about 120 people with instruments.
Not by Duke, anyway.
Because Duke takes just as many people, right?
Yeah.
You could just spell D-U-K-E.
Yeah, you could. And they did. And
Eventually.
So at least they know how to spell four-letter words. So.
It's such a logistics big deal. I've met a lot of people in bands from a lot of different schools. I've always had a lot of fun with them. You see them out there, and I always used to wonder, why are they having so much fun? Losing, winning, it doesn't matter. They're with their friends, right? But hundreds of them sometimes with big bands like the Ohio State and Alabama and stuff like that. You've got massive bands that are logistic nightmares to get them there, to get that many people to Atlanta. Man, how many people do you think were in the $1 Million Band for Alabama yesterday?
It was stacked. It's hard to say.
They filled up half the field.
Big. They stack. They run across the field and stack a line on each yard line all the way down. And if you counted them, it's impressive.
We're going to stop talking about the bands, but
it's fun.
I loved it.
It's a big part of college football.
It's a huge part. It's a big part for me. I wish we got to see it. I would love to watch Ohio State's band.
I would have too.
I would watch it every weekend.
I would have liked to have seen that game yesterday with what seemed to happen a lot yesterday with a lot of new quarterbacks coming out and really showing dominance. Granted, it wasn't against an excellent opponent, but Justin Fields, the transfer from Georgia, who I had heard through the offseason was really going to be the guy that he continued to hear from the coaches and players that this guy really has it, he gets it, he knows it, he's got the brain, he's got the skill. And Ryan Day looked to take advantage, and he certainly proved that. I think he had accounted for 5 touchdowns yesterday, which was the most by as a starter under the Buckeye uniform. And he looked impressive, threw the ball well, took a couple of shots, so obviously showed a little bit of toughness. There was one where he went down to the ground and looked like he was in some pain, but obviously continued to play well, had a really good stat line, and 5 touchdowns. It doesn't matter who you're playing. There's nothing to scrap at about that.
So you were in a hurry to talk about Big Ten football. All right, buddy. Okay, it's fine.
Not a hurry.
All right, just got the SEC out of the way.
Guess I'm done talking about bands. But
Well, I'll tell you this about Ohio State. No team looks better, in my opinion, in week 1 than Ohio State because those uniforms don't have those silly helmet stickers. And I'm sorry, Buckeyes.
Yeah.
I get it. I know you love it. I know it's part of the tradition. I like the tradition. I just think every time I see those stickerless helmets, I go, gosh, it looks so good. They look
good.
Perfect. They look timeless.
And
so when you see a guy like Justin Fields throwing dimes, right? And he wasn't throwing them all day, but man, he has a pretty ball sometimes.
Well, next week he'll have a lot more stickers on his
It
helmet.
makes you wonder, I don't know what exactly happened at Georgia, but I'm glad he's starting somewhere because Jake Fromm is good enough to lead them to being title competitive, so they don't need a guy like that to sit the bench. I like the transfer portal as long as it allows guys to show their true potential more often, especially with shorter careers than ever, right? You get them for 3 years, if that. Now we might get to see Justin Fields play that long, so I'm hopeful. I thought they looked great. Again, helmet stickers, they are huge at Ohio State.
Yeah.
They're like, how big are they?
It's
They fill up the
$50
helmets by
quarter.
the end of the year, so it becomes part of their uniform, right?
Yeah.
For sure, I get it. What's weird to me is when they do like a one-off, like a blackout or something, so they get the new helmets, and that poor guy on the commercial, it looks like he loves it, right? But he's got to put on about 100 million helmet stickers just for one game. It's not fun.
I don't envy that. But
I get
to
helmet
each their
stickers
own,
are a
and
part
it's
of the
their
sport.
gig.
I think helmet stickers are for first graders. I just don't love them. I'm okay with them. I'm glad that for the teams that don't do them, because once you introduce them, I don't see anybody take them away. I think some of the helmets just look so great. Like Boise State yesterday, their helmet was sharp, man.
There's going to be a
All
lot of
white
teams
the
with
Bronco
helmet
on it.
stickers that are going to look a lot different from they did this week. Georgia does it. Clemson, we know, does it. To each their own. It is what it is. If you're getting a bunch of stickers,
Georgia has
obviously
two of
you're
them.
doing well.
They got the black bones and the white bones.
And they'll have some more stickers next week after beating up on Vandy in Nashville yesterday. Jake from State Farm looked to
Jake from State Farm?
prove why they had two transfers they both did well yesterday. So all three guys that had previously been at Georgia, between Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, and Justin Fields,
That's
they all
right.
had great games yesterday. Eason may have had the best game out at Washington, looked to have a great stat line. He certainly looked sharp in the highlights that we saw, and definitely executed to a big win there. And as we were just talking about Justin Fields, and then Jake Fromm had a big game against Vandy. Another one of those that seemed to start with the week one jitters, where it took just a minute to really get things going. But once they did, really turned it on. Again, had a great stat line, had a handful of touchdowns, seemed to control the game. And I think Georgia's perfectly fine with the decisions that they made. And it's a testament to having such good recruiting that these guys clearly went out there and proved that they thought they deserved a spot to start with Georgia, and then went elsewhere and proved that they deserved the spots that they got with the transfers that they took, and really have taken that to making sure that they're being successful. They are, and they certainly have been. I don't think I can necessarily blame Georgia. Looks like they did make a really good decision in Fromm, and I wish them all the best. It was good to see them all win yesterday and
Good.
kind of eliminate some of that drama. Then, of course, the networks talked about it a little bit, but good to see them win.
I heard plenty of Georgia fans, and it sounded like the narrative out there was that they started slow and finished slow, and they're not real happy about that. But you know what? I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, a
Same
win's
thing
a
with the
win.
Alabama
It's
fans
week
yesterday.
one, conference teams, a divisional game even. So they're already a leg up on a lot of other teams in their conference, and it's a good win, and there's nothing to complain about. Nobody got injured as far as I heard from that game. So I would expect Georgia to understand. I know you just want to see everybody do everything when you get a chance, and Vandy's nothing to shake a stick at. They know how to play. I'm sure they came heated. Mason's a good coach, and I'm sure he
kinda
had
funny.
them playing through the end of the game where Georgia may have taken the gas off a little bit because they could, so I'm not going to complain about that.
I don't know if they did or not. We didn't watch it, to be honest. I'll do another deep dive, in particular on Georgia. I'm probably going to have Georgia Matt on here this week, Matt McGahee, but and I'll learn a lot more. Really, mostly what we got to watch was the Alabama game. In fact, that was the only game we got to watch from beginning to end. But I'll tell you what, I
That's
sure did
entirely
enjoy
true.
week one.
We got to watch almost all of the Oregon-Auburn matchup, which was in Dallas, Texas, and that proved to be
love that
one of
one.
the games of the day, if not the game of the day.
We got to watch Florida State beat Boise State, right?
That's what
and
we thought.
And I was telling you, you know what? I got a good feeling about Boise State, but then you were right. Florida takes a 3-touchdown lead, and I'm just going to have to flush my picks down the toilet.
It looked like Boise just continued to make mistakes that Florida
Yeah.
State took advantage of. We
so
walked
then we
away
left.
from the television thinking that game was done, it was toast, and then
Well,
the
it
next
was.
time we check, did I miss something? Obviously we did, and
What happened?
Boise had surmounted a comeback, and we heard Willie Taggart's interview where he's afraid that the team just doesn't know how to win, especially how to finish, and that was evident yesterday with Boise making that late-stage comeback at Doak in Tallahassee against a program that's still just in agony right now.
They're not good.
It seems like every season, we've got great friends in Tallahassee, and they all say the same thing. It's the start of the season. They have high hopes, and for right reasons. And then every time it seems it's week one, they just get demoralized by a loss like this, where they feel like they should win. They have every opportunity on the field when the game time kicks off to win.
Sure.
And then they find a way to lose.
Well, I'll say this. They're not total trash, but there were some elements that are total trash, including that offensive line again. However, with that said, Boise State is legitimate. They were tough last year. They're even better this year, it looks like. A lot of returning guys, super talented, really well coached. I don't know how much this necessarily tells us about Florida State, except for the O-line is still kind of crummy. But legitimately, they put up a good fight against a good team. So I'll say that. Look, they might not be boring to watch this year. Last year, they were, I wouldn't even say boring. They were insulting. It was so bad that it was kind of atrocious. And that's when I really can't stand to watch it. I'll change the channel. I don't like to see young guys really struggle with their fundamentals that bad. No, it's rare. And I know it happens a lot more in week one. Yeah, there just aren't a lot of teams like that I am okay with seeing fail so spectacularly, right? But give Boise State credit. Great football team. Great road win against the Seminoles.
Boise deserves a lot
and I
of
called
credit.
it. I put it on my picks. On
did.
Ion Greenville, don't forget, go to iongreenville.net. Try to compete with me. I know you picked Florida State out there, people. I know what you did. I know Bennett did.
Gray was proud of that pick before that game started.
I was proud of a lot of my picks, man.
He was not happy from what we were actually watching in the first half of that game, waiting for the game that we were going to attend. But yeah, kudos to Boise. That's an epic win. You go down to Tallahassee. It's a huge climate difference. You expect those guys to be maybe cramping up.
They were.
Again, having those week one jitters as well, and they just found a way to get the job done. It may have been in large part to the Florida State mistakes that they were making, but there's no taking away from Boise State being well coached enough to go down to the ACC, home of one of the storied programs in college football, and get that win and run away with it. There's nothing wrong to be said about that. And I do hope that Florida State finds a way to right this ship. It's better when teams like that can compete and be better. I just don't know. We've seen this story time and time again, as I mentioned, so much recently since Bowden's departure, where things just, they look promising and then they kind of just fall flat on their face. And it's been a couple years now since Jimbo's left that things have really turned for the worse, especially to start the season. And I need to see it. I want to see it, but I just don't know that these guys are going to be able to buckle down and erase this. How does this affect their mentality going forward? How does this affect practice going forward? How does this affect how Willie Taggart chooses to coach these guys? It's an uphill battle. It's more than just a loss. It's another taste in their mouth of a bad loss that they had a chance to win at the beginning of the season, and now they've got to right that ship in ways that I know none of them were hoping to do.
I don't feel good for anybody who feels bad about Florida State right now. But I tell you what, I sure am a big fan of Georgia State. Gotta love them. Represent Atlanta.
Yeah, there's another SEC team decides to take a weekend off, it seemed like. And again, I'm not knocking the win by Georgia State, but Tennessee looked bad. I mean, there's no getting around it. This is a home game. There again, another team that's thinking, hey, we're on the upswing. We're recruiting better.
Is that what they were thinking?
It's what we hoped for. We've been waiting through the trudge of going through coaches that we don't agree with, and now we feel like we've got the guy. You've got everybody there to open the season, and they just didn't do very well at all. There wasn't much to speak of on the offense. They had one breakaway run, and then it just looked like they just didn't have it. Kudos again to Georgia State. That's an epic win for them, a great way to start the season, and just a deflating loss for an SEC East team that really thought maybe we can't necessarily win the East, but we certainly want to give Georgia a run for the money and see where we can end up and start showing people that we're really building here. And now nobody's going to buy into that. I'm certainly selling all the Tennessee stock that I would have ever owned,
stop
but I
saying
can
that
tell
word.
you I don't own it.
I like Coach Pruitt. That's about as close as I can get to saying I like anything about it.
I like that they lost.
I don't like that for anybody. I will like when they're out of the SEC and stop embarrassing the East so bad.
They weren't the only team that embarrassed the SEC East yesterday, Greg.
Well, but I don't dislike any of those teams.
True. We certainly heard a lot of sad stories from the fans in Columbia, South Carolina, where South Carolina decided that they just weren't ready to beat their northern brethren and took a hard loss to North Carolina, who another freshman story quarterback in Sam Howell who seemed to have a great game, or at least managed the game well enough to get a good victory with some playmakers making some plays for them. It looked like South Carolina had the game maybe not well in hand, but they certainly had the first half lead. They had a lead going into the third quarter, and then they just couldn't continue somehow, some way. I heard a lot of people complaining about Jake Bentley and his performance.
I saw a lot of bad mistakes.
Sounds like they've got a lot to fix there as well, and another program that thought maybe this would be a year where we could get maybe a number of wins that would showcase that we're headed in the right direction, that we've got the right guys on the program, and again, all for naught. Them in Tennessee feeling the same effects today in games that they thought they should win. North Carolina, probably a better opponent than Georgia Southern. I think they were 25-point dogs.
Georgia State, by the way.
Georgia State, excuse me. And
Pick your poison.
Mac Brown coming back to North Carolina where he's coached before and finding a way to get a tough win. We all saw the emotional outcry from him, and none of us can unfortunately forget seeing him dance in the locker room. But now they've got that win under their belt. They're going to be going in high, and South Carolina's going to be holding their heads and looking forward to an even tougher slate as they get into conference battle.
I thought Mac Brown looked like Jerry Jeudy. I thought he had some sick moves.
I didn't.
Sick, man. Some stank foot.
They made me sick.
Oh, man. I wouldn't say that South Carolina fans can hold their head up high after this loss. What we saw was an awful lot of really bad mistakes. But certainly North Carolina is, number one, better than I thought they were. And number two, way better of a team to lose to than Georgia State.
Yeah, true. And it would be nice again to see somebody else in the ACC kind of building up and making it competitive for what seems to be really a one-team league right now, and where there's Clemson and everybody else. But, that Virginia Tech game looked promising, and then Boston College got themselves a win in what looked to be a pretty exciting battle as well. So maybe those two teams can put something up.
What were you thinking that game was going to be? Because I remember my pick, and it came true. That's really all I have to say.
Boston College did get the
College.
win. Virginia Tech, held tight. But again, I'm more hopeful that the two of them will both be a little bit more competitive this season. It's hard to say. It's week one. I think these teams were pretty evenly matched, but it would be nice to see these two teams going forward to be able to continue some winning and see what else we can do. Same ilk with North Carolina, knowing they've got a true freshman under center, that maybe this Howell kid has something that they're looking for in the same way that they had with Trubisky, where things could really turn and start improving and strengthening up this league that really needs to, and I'd look forward to it. Anybody that can win, I'm happy to see win, and if you can start really building these out-of-conference wins, it's only better for the league.
You brought up an interesting point about, good teams, and Virginia Tech might be this or that, right? I think everybody right now looks for elite teams, and then everything else is not elite. And so there's literally two categories of football teams to people right now. I have a real big problem with that, especially when some of the elite teams aren't playing at their elite best. I know it's week one, but I saw an awful lot of good, fun, fundamental football out there this weekend. And to just kind of look, Florida State, not good. Tennessee, putrid. Oh my God, puke bad. North Carolina, South Carolina, it wasn't totally boring. And yeah, there were tons of mistakes. But man, I saw an awful lot of good, fun football games out there. And not everybody is going to always look elite, but LSU, for example, wow, talented, fun. Texas, there you go. A lot of people are picking them. I still think it's Oklahoma's. Well, that game will be tonight. We're recording this on a Sunday, so we'll see. And then Notre Dame plays tomorrow on Labor Day, on Monday.
That's right.
And I don't know what to expect from them, but, you have a lot of teams who played puke bad, like Florida State and Tennessee, and last weekend with Miami and Florida, where everybody just gets so frustrated and upset with the preseason rankings and all of that stuff. Meanwhile, you have LSU, and nobody pays attention because of who they're playing, and they say, oh, it's week one, and that's your opponent. But, man, I tell you what, take these chances to watch some awesome football because, like I was saying about Boise State, I knew they were going to be fun to watch. I didn't know Florida State was going to be less improved than I expected them to be, but Boston College, man, they're always fun to watch at home. Just change the channel, folks. Give it a try.
There were some good performances out there. It's a good one on Joe Burrow with
Same
LSU.
thing with Alabama.
Again, I'm not sure many people were choosing to watch that game. The guy went out there and executed with a essentially a new pass play caller on their sidelines and really dialing things in, focusing on his strengths, and had a very impressive day. Another statistically record-breaking day, I believe, for an LSU quarterback, and just went out there and executed. Another transfer quarterback who's found a new home.
Oh, that's
and is
right.
doing fantastically well. Yeah, he was at Ohio State before he got down to
I don't
LSU.
know why I keep forgetting that.
And again, they saw something in him that dictated that they thought that he was going to be the future. Didn't work out there, but now it seems like with a new passing attack with LSU, they may be dialed in. Again, it's week 1. It wasn't an excellent opponent, but he certainly had a game where statistically looked excellent, and on film definitely looked dialed in. Threw some really good balls, looked like he had good ball security, and his stat line was really impressive. So we'll see, continue moving forward. Looks to be a lot of really good QB talent out there that maybe people were wanting to see, that I certainly needed to see in week 1, where you had these question marks. You're wondering how people were going to do, and some excelled, some didn't, and some kind of just got through and got a win. But certainly really, really fun football to watch, and we still have a lot left. We still got football tonight.
Right.
We still got football on Labor Day with Notre Dame. It's just, I'm so glad it's back. Everything feels right in the world now that we've got college football back
A little
in our
bit.
lives.
I mean, for most of us, this was the first week of college football.
Yeah, week 0.
For many
Yeah.
teams out there, including Tennessee, the season's already over.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, I think they maybe should have kept a hold of those trash cans that they had from a couple of years ago.
You know what? I love you, Brock Coons, if you're listening. I kind of hope you're not. But I turn on the cartoon hate. You have to hate somebody. I try to participate in the hate because I see it everywhere, and I'm like, I have to do it just so I can understand the way everybody thinks. It's a lot easier to do when you lose at home to Georgia State to open the season. That's all.
There's nothing any Tennessee fan isn't going to say that we're not already saying that game was paltry, it was bad.
Can we talk about that for a minute? Because when you were at the University of Alabama, first of all, I want you to name the college football head coaches that were there while you were there, all of them. Second, I want you to talk about what Tennessee did to Alabama back then and why it's okay for us to still harbor that pain.
Yeah, I've understood that pain all too well during my tenure at Alabama. We started with Mike Dubose, one of the worst haircuts imaginable. Had a little bit of success, went to the SEC championship in 1999, but then the guy turned out to just not be a very good person. And he was gone after that. Gosh,
Gone
I
or
need
fired?
to make sure I've got this right. Franchione, was he immediately following that? Dennis Franchione from A&M, left Alabama to return to A&M, and I believe he's at Texas State now. After that, it was a cycle of poor decisions.
I remember Franchione. Do you remember the Franchione bobbleheads?
Yeah.
They had a party when he left? And so everybody was brought out their Franchione bobbleheads to, I think, the Walmart or Papa John's parking lot and hit them with baseball bats.
There was a lot of promise there. He had some pretty good talent, some guys that went on to the league as well. And just one day he up and left, and everybody was kind of upset. The players were the most upset, and that really made the underclassmen upset as well across campus, and that he didn't say goodbye. But
yeah, Dennis.
It's fine. I understand wanting to go home, and he did to A&M.
Did we beat Tennessee that year?
I hope.
Did we beat Tennessee any year you were there?
I can definitely remember losing to Tennessee.
Don't think Alabama beat Tennessee when you were there.
I'm not entirely certain.
Pretty sure that it didn't happen.
There's a lot of moments I've already chosen to forget and clearly have during that tenure.
Do you remember Peyton Manning directing the band for the first time, and now it's a tradition, a dang tradition?
Not even sure who this Manning character is you're talking about, but
He
sounds
still
like
doesn't
a
have
pretty nice
rhythm,
guy.
but I like Peyton.
Mike Price was awful.
You like Peyton?
He didn't even get to coach a game. Again, and then we had Mike Shula, who was there for a good bit of time. Had Brody Croyle, had some good players under his
I liked
belt that
Shula.
really didn't turn out. And then somebody replaced him. I can't remember his name.
Do you remember when you told me that Alabama was hiring Nick Saban? And all I remember
his name,
saying,
Nick Saban.
yeah, no, but I was happy with Shula. I liked him. You know, there's tradition,
He's
some history
family.
there.
He's Bama family. He does have a legacy with Alabama, and
liked
he's a
him.
likable guy. He's had a great tenure in the NFL. He's been with the Panthers. He's been in Miami.
Well, I don't like that.
He works well in the NFL. I think we hoped some of that experience would pay off with us and at Alabama, and it just hasn't. But it has since then. Once he's left Alabama, he's had a very successful career again in the NFL. So kudos to him. Nothing but love for him from the Bama family. He just didn't fit as a head coach at Alabama. I don't really think he fits as a head coach anywhere. I don't think he's got the tenacity that we're looking for at the capstone. And for love him or hate him, I think Nick Saban is just an excellent fit on what we're looking for. A lot of people want to make that comparison to Bear Bryant. Perfectly fine with that, in my opinion. I like the disciplinarian that the players love to speak so highly of, and nobody loves anything more than the proof on the field when you're winning games, when you're winning championships, and you're doing so consistently. And he's been everything we could ask for. The only thing I could have asked for is that he had been on campus when I was on campus.
I agree with that now, but you're not talking about when you were there.
No.
And what I was saying was, you told me that Alabama was hiring Nick Saban. And I looked at you and said, what? We're hiring that coach from LSU? Why?
And I remember saying
like
we're
that.
not hiring Rich Rodriguez and fearing the panic that we weren't actually getting Rich Rodriguez, and I'm so glad that we didn't, and he ended up in Michigan. But yeah,
But we had so many bad coaches at Alabama, right?
True.
And then we had Shula, who I thought was turning the tide, so to speak. Things were
Little.
trending up. He had done some great recruiting, and including guys like, he didn't recruit Greg McElroy, did he?
No,
Or did he?
had done better. Yes.
There were some
he
of those
did.
guys on that title-winning team under Nick Saban that came from Shula for sure. But I remember, look, LSU used to be like a homecoming team for Alabama, right? Yeah, they had some history a long, long time ago. But for us, that was just an in-conference team that you beat up on for fun.
It's not
They were
that
not
LSU
good.
hasn't had some success over the years,
Sure.
especially decades ago. But
they
you're
hired
right. When I was
Saban.
at school, LSU was a gimme win. LSU was, in fact, a homecoming opponent when I was at school.
Yeah.
It was a game we always expected to win, and then this short little guy Nick Saban comes in, and all of a sudden LSU becomes a powerhouse. Literally in the blink of an eye, they became a powerhouse. I think we all remember, or not everybody remembers, but they were certainly one of the most dominant programs of that era,
Yeah.
and seemed to come out of nowhere. And before you know it, they're winning championships and a force to be reckoned with across the country, with phenomenal defense first and foremost. They had some excellent tailbacks too, but led by stellar defensive across the board. Time and place, again, that necessarily wouldn't win right now because I don't think it recruits the same, but that's how this game works, and that's why Saban is as good as he is now, because he's been such a good recruiter since then. He knows how to develop talent based against where the game is now, and that's what he did so well at LSU, and said, I'm looking for a type of guy to run a type of system and lead with defense. He did that there. Now we see a changing of the tides, pun intended, where it's heavily built on the offense, where it's part of the game, part of the swing of the game, and part of the way that we coach now. You talked earlier about we're talking about the elite teams and then everybody else. I can't necessarily blame anybody, coaches, fan bases, talk show hosts alike, that do that, because that's how we're built now. We have a playoff system now.
Yeah.
Even through the BCS, we've been talking about the upper echelon teams and everybody else. I just want to watch good college football. I'm so glad it's back. I'm so glad we have everything lined up for this weekend. Next weekend looks to be phenomenal, but I'm truly grateful that I got to share this Saturday with two of my favorite Bama fans, really three of my favorite Bama fans, and Brandon Gray and my father, and we had an excellent time really soaking it in and enjoying every second of a fantastic Saturday of college football.
It never gets old to me being, I think there's a lot of debate that's either one side or the other for these games that aren't at home college stadiums, right? Yeah, you make a payday, and a lot of people think that it's just a home game, and I get it. But I tell you what, to have that many fans of any team travel, like, okay, Oregon last night in Dallas, you've got to give those Ducks fans credit. Man, they traveled en masse.
They
right?
traveled
a lot
well,
of people. It was incredible.
And it was a night game.
But
And
to
if
see
you
that
watched
many
College
people-
Game Day, they were out in full force. There was an absolute mass of people, both from Auburn and Oregon. It was a packed field in Dallas yesterday for game day, and knowing that they've got to go all day long and all night long to get to their game and finally see that finish line, and it was worth it. I mean, the game day was at the right place. That certainly looked to be the best game of the night, and it was a tale of two halves where Oregon really came out and dominated the first half. They were throwing well. They were executing on defense. They had the energy. And then the second half really flipped. Bo Nix, who had been terrible in his first start with Auburn, to say the least, as a true freshman.
Lots
which
of
you
mistakes.
can understand, playing in Jerry's world against a top 20 opponent and an out-of-conference opponent with the tradition that they have, or at least the rivalry that they have from the BCS championship game a few years ago, where Auburn barely peeled off a win against Oregon in that matchup. To do that and to come out
Won
of the
by a
locker
field
room,
goal. It
won
looked
by a
like it was
field
going to be
goal.
the same thing.
Came out in the second half and executed. We saw a lot of what, again, I know people like Gray and I expect in games like this, where you have a team traveling from the Pacific Northwest down to the south and having to deal with a much different climate. You're at a different elevation. You've got different humidity, the heat, the air feels different. There's no question Oregon was affected by that yesterday. They were going down left and right in the second half with cramps and stiffness and loss of breath. We saw a lot of guys with their hands on their hips.
Oxygen.
From a team that really seemed to have it dialed in, knew how to execute, but fatigue will wear on not just your body but your mind, and they just could not execute late into the second half. They really kind of fell apart. You could see the body energy was gone, and before you knew it, Auburn had the exact opposite energy. They're used to practicing in a southern climate. They're used to this humidity. This is what they practice in, and that conditioning played a huge role in that game. Auburn's energy level started to skyrocket. It was exponential. You saw these guys really getting excited on defense. Got a couple of good 3-and-out stops on an Oregon team and Justin Herbert that was playing really well, and they started changing the field and moving things forward. Auburn did a good job of keeping Oregon's defense out there, helping them
I was gonna
take the gas out of the tank.
It wasn't like they were
keeping
kicking
them
their
out
butts.
there.
Auburn was having to go for it on fourth down several times,
They were
including
pushing,
a few
but-
times they didn't make it.
And I think that's, as much as I hate to say, it's a testament to the coaching at Auburn, because they really did manage the game well. Their clock management at the end of the game was fantastic. They managed their time well. Oregon tried to do their best to get Auburn to burn a couple timeouts, and I think it played right into Auburn's hands. They knew that was going to happen. They allowed it to happen. They didn't hesitate. They executed 2 timeouts within between the last third and second minute. They got Auburn to call 2 timeouts. So that left them with 2.5 minutes to execute their 2-minute offense.
Oregon burned 2 timeouts back-to-back
Oregon
on
did.
fourth down and didn't convert.
They came out on a fourth down,
tough.
and they had their quarterback go out. They burned a timeout thinking they could bring him back in, realized that they couldn't. Per the rules, if you go out with an injury, you have to stay out for at least 1 full play. They did not. They had to burn a second timeout, which again just caused that discombobulation on the sidelines, and everybody's kind of pulling their hair, and that energy is just as magnetic as everything else. It got Auburn jacked up in the opposite way, and they managed to take advantage again. With the time that they got, they ran down the field. Bo Nix made a couple of really fantastic throws, one of them for a touchdown with 16 seconds left on the clock when they snapped the ball, and Auburn got the win. They maybe not the best coaching decision, as I'm sitting here bragging about how well they were coaching for the remainder of the fourth quarter. The last step where they got a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for celebrating in the end zone, which I didn't agree with. They said he spiked the ball, but
he did.
He I don't know.
It's a pretty straightforward penalty.
In that situation, I don't know whether I would have thrown that flag, but they did. So Auburn should have adjusted with the kickoff, knowing that Oregon's only going to have time for 1 play when they get the ball, maybe 2. They've been kicking it out of the end zone all night long. I'm sure that's what they would have done had they not incurred that penalty, but they did. So instead of skying the ball and making sure that Oregon, who had really great kickoff returns all night long, didn't have the opportunity to squeak one by, score the game, go-ahead touchdown, they decided to squib the punt. Ends up in the hands of one of their playmakers with Oregon. He squeezes down the football field to about the 30-yard line to give them an excellent chance to, not necessarily even a Hail Mary. It's a Hail Mary play, but you really don't have to throw it all that far. Your receivers are going to have time to get down there and adjust and get in front of the ball. And they just couldn't execute. Justin Herbert threw about 30 yards outside of the stadium. And Auburn
they gave
gets
him a
away
good
with the win.
pocket. They gave him an opportunity, and he just threw a long ball. That's all. He's still got a bright future. This was an opportunity for a Heisman moment for him. Didn't get it. Just didn't get it done. Didn't get the W.
Bo Nix got it. He got himself a Heisman moment.
I don't know
win
about
in
that.
Dallas. Well, and certainly at the end of the year, if he's in that discussion, that game is going to be part of his highlights. I'm not saying he's going to be there by any stretch.
I have to interrupt.
But it's impossible to ignore how poorly he played in the first half, how he clearly went into the locker room, got his head adjusted, and really took control of that game in a way that you expect from an upperclassman, not from a freshman, not in a game that's that high energy and moving towards the fourth quarter in an environment like that. Kudos to him. Hats off to the guy who really did show an excellent execution and game plan, clock management, all the way across the board. A great finish for them, and what I thought was the highlight game of the weekend.
I actually thought the highlight game of the weekend was Georgia State.
It's a good argument.
Why does that make me so happy today? I don't know. I'm going to stop.
Because we all root for the underdog. It's sports.
I don't root for the underdog. I wasn't watching that game.
By nature, we root for the underdog. It's the David and Goliath story. It's
I
as
think
old
it's
as
just
time.
Tennessee.
If you just close your eyes and
The underdog was BC.
They were
The underdog was the
25-point
Broncos.
underdog in Knoxville. Yes, the rest of the country who didn't have any salt in this game wanted them to lose. Because
I wanted FAU to cover the spread against Ohio State.
Yeah,
It
same.
looks like a
I just wanted
resounding
good
victory,
football.
but nobody's aware how happy I am.
We absolutely got some good football yesterday, and I'm just glad that we got to enjoy an awful lot of it, and just soaking in the highlights and waking up again this morning and checking the stat lines and watching yet even more college football highlights. It's been a great weekend.
I enjoyed my picks. And I'm going to say this again real quick. Go to irongreenville.net, do the college football pick'em challenge. Just sign up. It goes through CBS Sports, if I remember right. It's all pretty intuitive, but you're picking against the spread, which is my bread and butter. However, usually not in week one. Because week one, like I said last week, I don't watch a lot of the preseason stuff at all. I don't do deep dives on players and personnel. I wait. And I probably shouldn't do this. I should probably prepare more. But I love the surprise, like the shock. I wasn't shocked by what Boise State did. I wasn't necessarily shocked by Boston College at home. Either they always play tough. But like Missouri losing at home to Wyoming, that's kind of a shocker. I didn't expect North Carolina and South Carolina to really be that much of a matchup, but you never can predict that level of mistakes. I didn't expect so many teams. It seemed like you had a tale of two teams, right, where most teams were sort of flat and then would pick up the pace. Or they started really strong, like Oregon and Auburn, and then, I should just say Oregon, and then fell off at the end, completely fell off. So bad timing for some teams, opportunity knocks all over the place, all over the country for some others, including Hawaii. Let's not gloss over that because we haven't talked about that. I know you didn't see that game, Hawaii beating Arizona on Thursday, and Clemson, a resounding win over Georgia Tech at home in spite of the fact that some fans aren't happy with the performance.
Regardless, it's week one, man. I mean,
It's
just be
week
happy.
one.
If your team got away with a win, be happy. If your team succumbed to a loss, cheer up. It's only week one. I'm just glad it's here. I'm glad we get to experience all this. You're right. We've talked about this for the decades that we've been into college football at this level, as far as checking against the spreads and seeing how we actually perform in our hypothetical guesses against who's going to do what. And week one is always just the outlier. Everybody thinks they know what they're talking about. You can read all the magazines, and so often it's par for the course. Everybody's picking the same teams. We had so many people had Florida ranked so highly, and we see this again every year. Somebody's ranked way higher than they should be. There's a lot of teams that are ranked way lower than they should be. It's week one. These guys are getting the dust knocked off. They're really trying to figure out how they can play against other teams that are trying to play just as hard as they are. I never really like putting money down on week one. It just seems like it's a bad bet. You can talk about who you have coming back. There's so much change. There's so many variables that you really have to connect these dots. And at the end of the day, it's still just kids playing a game. And it's impossible to predict week one. As anybody wants to tell you that they can, I need to see it. And we saw a lot of great football, and we got a lot better idea, even if teams were playing weaker opponents. We can gather a lot of information from watching these performances this week, and that's the way I like to live when it comes to college football. Week one is an anomaly for me where I'm not touching any kind of wagers whatsoever. I'll have my predictions for the end of the season, but week one, I don't want to make any bets because I have no idea who's going to show what hands.
5-star talent. I think a lot of people see that and expect a victory and just move on and change the channel, make their pick, and just pick that team, so to speak, right? We've seen it plenty. Blake Barnett, for example, right? 5-star guy, supposed to be the next big thing. Wasn't. Didn't have a great game this week either. Hunter Johnson, I was optimistic for them on the road at Stanford because Stanford's on the quarter system, so there's nobody there in the stands pretty much for the Cardinal. Stanford gets a win over Northwestern because Hunter Johnson was arguably pretty terrible in that game. And you never really can tell. Meanwhile, Justin Fields, like you said, incredible. A huge weekend, nonstop. He made some mistakes too. Tua, I think, was ranked third overall for quarterbacks across the country. I think Burrow, of all people for LSU, was at the top. I think Joe Brady, that higher, and ramping up the tempo for LSU is going to make an immediate impact. It looks like it already has, but dovetailing from that, Texas. We didn't talk much about them, but that Texas and LSU
That's
matchup.
going to be fun.
Oh, man.
After
good
what we
grief.
saw this weekend between both teams with Ellinger at Texas, and we know they've got some skill guys, They're really well coached. We all know that. LSU, I can't necessarily say that they're really well coached, but they're definitely talented.
Who do you
and
like
it's going to
more?
be a great matchup. It's a top 10 matchup. It's going to be fantastically exciting. Now both teams have big momentum going into this game, which is going to carry a lot of weight. It's in Austin, I believe. Yeah, because game day's in Austin. It's in Austin. They're going to Texas. And wow, I'm so excited for that matchup. I cannot wait.
That crowd will
already.
be lit.
This is my favorite thing. I'm just like, can we just fast forward Monday through Friday so I can get to another college football Saturday?
Which game? Well, this college football Saturday, you've got LSU and Texas, and you've got Clemson and Texas A&M. I think the Texas game is immediately following that game, right?
It is. That's right. Clemson and A&M are the 3:30 slot, and then the Texas LSU game is the 7:30, 8 o'clock slot. So it's
I don't care what channel it's on.
Of two top 20 teams, two games with top 20 talent going against each other, and it's just going to be fantastic. Two teams from different conferences in each game.
Back to back.
Big matches.
So
huge.
Get all
week
your
two.
chores done Saturday morning so that you can be prepared.
Yeah.
Do we know where college game day is going to be yet?
Austin.
Is that right?
That's
okay,
what I
that
just
makes
said.
sense. I didn't know.
Austin, Texas.
College game day is going to be there.
That's where the University of Texas locates.
I didn't.
Yes.
I didn't know if they had announced it yet, and the reason why I asked is I don't know. They were sort of there for the Clemson game Thursday, the season opener against Georgia Tech, which was also the first ever game on the ACC network. However, I didn't get to see any of the college game day stuff, and the point I was making was this A&M game is a huge matchup, arguably Clemson's biggest matchup of the year for sure. It looks even more so now. However, I don't see another real good opportunity to have game day there. And that was sort of a talking point last year. And I think Clemson's going to hold on to that number one rating and I guess not get a game day that I'll get to watch. So maybe I'm being a little bit selfish. But college game day in Austin, Texas, hosting LSU. Good grief, that's going to be fun.
Can't argue with the decision. I understand you might want
I'm not arguing with it. I just didn't know.
Clemson and A&M. If either of these two teams would have lost yesterday in LSU or Texas, it may have made a difference. But I still think that game, especially after what they did yesterday, both of those teams look to be great must-watch college football next Saturday night. Obviously,
Let's
the
make this
A&M
fun.
game and the Clemson game is going to be magnificent as well, but they definitely made the right decision. LSU-Texas is going to be a brawl.
You know, I feel like we can have the same opinion on A&M because we've been around each other for the past 48 hours, and we've seen the same football. Well, I haven't seen much A&M. They haven't really shown any. So I'll have to deep dive on them a little bit this week.
I
guess.
don't know that I've seen a single play.
Yeah,
I mean,
isn't
I
that
read
funny?
about it, but I don't know that I actually saw any highlights. And I'll do some film study this week just to see how I feel like that game's going to go. But if you really want my prediction, I'm taking Clemson. I've been saying this for a while, or at least since Jimbo's hire at A&M. They have the money. They have been recruiting better since he's been there, and I do think he's a talented coach. I just need to see it with A&M. We've seen they've kind of been
What
the
do you need to
Michigan
see?
in the SEC. I need to see them really get a strong 10-win season. I need to see them win more than one game a year that they're not supposed to. A&M's kind of been this team that it may battle with the guys that they're supposed to battle with. They find a way to lose 4 games a year, and things just seem to kind of taper off. If we're talking about LSU being a threat in the West, I need to see
LSU.
them be a threat in the West. I need to see A&M beat LSU or Alabama or Auburn. Those are still the 3 teams that you've got to get at least 2 wins over to be considered a threat in the West right now.
Didn't A&M beat LSU last year? No, they didn't.
No, but that was a
Wait,
fantastic
no, and
game.
then they did, and then they didn't.
Yeah.
And then 7 overtimes later,
So many
while
overtimes.
Coach Orgeron is soaking Gatorade,
They
he
changed
has
the
to
rules.
shake the hand of Jimbo Fisher and say, "Good
That's the
win,
game that
Coach."
finally changed the overtime rules again. And, of course, it involved LSU again. So now I think it's only 3 overtimes where we're going
course.
after the 2-point conversion every time now. Something else changed with that as well. But, yeah, I would like to see it. Obviously, A&M's another one of those programs that seems like a sleeping dog. They're ready to wake up and start barking, but I need to see it. They continue to talk about the talent that Jimbo's brought there. They definitely have the pockets for donations and money and facilities. But I need to see it. You've got to beat Auburn, Alabama, and LSU, at least 2 of the 3, for you to really make a statement. And here's a great opportunity with Clemson. If you can make that statement, beat the defending national champions in Death Valley, that makes a huge statement. I just don't see it.
So
I
you're
don't
saying
see how
you
well
picked
they
the
travel
Aggies over Clemson this weekend? I can't believe that.
I can't.
I've got to disagree with you there.
I did not say that. Nobody heard that. I
Oh.
will not make that pick. If I'm betting a nickel, I'm not making any money. I'm not taking A&M. I'm picking Clemson to win that game. It's at home. They've been preparing for this game already. Dabo knows that this is going to be the game that everybody's going to want to watch for Clemson. And make no mistake, Dabo knows how to market this program as well as anybody. He knows how to coach. He knows how to recruit. But he also knows the visual side that the rest of America sees. He's going to use this game as, hey, we're going to not just beat the SEC at home, which you're all going to watch. We're going to beat them soundly. And enough of this talk about our schedule. And it's not just people in the Southeast. Across the nation, people are wanting to say, well, what on Clemson's schedule are we actually going to watch? Well, you're going to watch this one. So when you watch this one, Dabo wants to show you we are the number one team. We deserve to be in the discussion for the national championship. And he wants to really make a statement against A&M, against another SEC team.
My problem with Clemson's schedule is not anything against Clemson. Look, we have a playoff, so anything anybody else wants to say, it doesn't matter. You can argue that it's an advantage, and I certainly would. But more to the point, it's simply disappointing. It's sad to see a conference slate that is just not that fundamentally exciting, including Florida State. Like, yeah, I get that I can't convince people to watch Boston College. I get that, and I love defense. They're just tough, but I don't expect them to compete for the conference. They certainly haven't over the last decade, so to speak. Miami's such a big question mark rather than definitely an exclamation point about how bad they are. Virginia looks, I guess, hopeful. But again, that's a hard sell, and it's not on the calendar, so they may face Clemson in December, and that's something to be excited about legitimately. I will take this, though. If Clemson is playing not so great opponents, I want to see them just bloody everybody. I want to see them murder them. I want to see Trevor Lawrence going for it like he was against Georgia Tech, but made some really bad decisions. And Georgia Tech did some good things, too. I'm not trying to throw Trevor Lawrence under the bus, but what I'm trying to get at is I want them to run up some scores. I think it's okay to say that that's not such a bad thing to do. If you have the talent and you got to be prepared, why not take advantage of it? You know, who was it that scored 79 points yesterday?
Oh, gosh. Who was
You know who it was.
Yeah, I can't remember.
You know, and it feels dirty. Why?
Who was it?
You know. Give it time.
It's not going to come.
Okay, let's play a little game here. Pick a coach you don't necessarily like who might run up a score.
I really don't know. I'm sorry. I'm missing on
I'll
this
give you
one.
his
I
first
remember
name.
it was 79 points.
James?
Oh, that's right. Penn State. Yeah. James Franklin doing what he's want to do, I guess.
That's who he is.
79 points. I don't really need to know anything more than that. Even if you're playing your water boy, 79.
And we don't need to talk
is
more
kind
than
of
that.
Egregious and. But it is kind of the nature of the beast in this day and age. If you want to get people talking about you and you're not in a big game,
Not talking.
That's something some coaches like to do.
Not talking. Heisman. You want to get Heisman. And that was the point I was going to make about James Franklin. He put Saquon Barkley in positions to throw touchdowns, to catch touchdowns, to have Heisman film, right? He made a strong campaign, and they spent a good amount of money on it, too, like Ohio State's done that before, like some programs don't. Clemson hasn't before. Trevor Lawrence is legitimately a Heisman hopeful, right?
Sure.
And I would kind of be surprised a little bit if he doesn't win one. There's also a ton of talk about Travis Etienne. He's explosive, bro. Don't laugh. But
they're both on a lot of people's Heisman shortlist. Certainly Trevor's at
Sure.
the top of a lot of people's Heisman shortlist preseason.
Your Heisman moments come this weekend.
You want to win that trophy. Everybody wants to win that trophy. Don't make any mistakes. Everybody would love to have it. But I know Dabo, and I know he's got to focus on what he needs to do to win the ultimate trophy, which is the national championship trophy. Will they make a push for the Heisman? I do believe so. At the expense of the national championship, I don't think so. I don't expect to see Trevor Lawrence in games late where the game is put away just to pad his stats to hopefully get the stiff arm trophy in New York. If they're doing what they're going to do, and if they're winning the games where he can sit the second half, then he's going to be in that discussion anyway. And I fully expect him to do just that, not only because of the ACC being down, but because they have the talent and because I think Coach Dabo knows exactly that. If we can just get up big, make these guys execute, which we know they know how to do, and really get into games where we can take them off and set them on the bench and stay healthy.
Yeah.
You can win a Heisman by staying healthy. You can't win a Heisman by being great for 8 weeks and then spraining your ankle for 2. That's the best way to not have an opportunity. I think that he'll know how to coach them up. But more importantly, as you mentioned, the ACC being down, there's nobody that's going to argue this is the best of times for the ACC. But Clemson's going to have to win those games decidedly. I think they will, but more importantly, as it pertains to next week, this is going to be a game that he knows, that the team knows. This is our shining spotlight. There's nobody left on our schedule that's ranked. And
there's Syracuse. They were 22. They may go up after a win this weekend, so we'll see.
We'll see.
But yeah,
and that's been a great
the
game the past couple of years. Every Clemson fan knows that. The Syracuse has been a thorn in the side of the Tigers for a little bit of time. We could see something like that. But certainly an SEC West team in A&M that really, apparently I heard great things from all the Clemson fans that went down to Kyle Field last year, and I expect nothing less for the Aggies fans that are coming up to Clemson to have a really good time in Death Valley and that experience. I just expect them to make a statement. And I don't, again, as I said before, I need to see it with A&M. I don't think this is the game where I'm going to be surprised. I would love to be, just for the sake of college football, for that chaos factor that we all love to have, where the defending national champion could be upset at home by a middle-of-the-pack SEC West team. It would be fun to talk about. I'm not going to bet a dime on it. I'm taking Clemson big because I think they know that they need to make a statement in this game on the national level to beat an SEC West team, to beat an SEC team, to beat a team while they have the spotlight handily, and show the world why. Yeah, you're going to say what you're going to say about the rest of the ACC schedule, but we are who we are, and here's where we put our money.
Former rival coach, too, Jimbo Fisher.
That's true. Yeah.
Coming back to Death Valley.
I don't know how much that plays into it.
You want to go to the game?
Might like to go to that game, yeah. Yeah.
We've been going to Clemson games for a long time together, haven't we?
Yeah, I've been to quite a few with you, yes.
Yeah, since before we were born.
I can't imagine tickets are going to be cheap for that matchup.
Yeah, I don't know how much they are. Tickets, that's a hot topic now. Ticket prices have gone up, but yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't remind anybody that Bennett and I both were going to Clemson games in Mom's belly.
That's true.
She went to every single home game in that 1978 season.
We heard some good games.
Good year.
Yeah, I remember nothing, but it's good times.
It was fun. I was at the Clemson home opener last year, so I sort of go back and forth now, it seems, against Furman. It was so hot. Man, it was dangerous hot. I don't think anybody got any serious problems for it, but I burnt my knee on the AstroTurf out there. It was just tough.
How did it feel in the air-conditioned Mercedes-Benz Stadium yesterday?
Couldn't have been any more opposite.
Luxurious.
Man. So yesterday, the weather here in Atlanta was pristine. It was warm. It was sunny. It was hopeful. Everything was bright. Everybody was out walking. Fans everywhere. It was terrific. Dragon Con. So yeah, here come a bunch of Alabama fans, followed closely by a Luigi,
stormtroopers, Zelda herself,
and an elf. Yeah, it was just hilarious. You'd see these people come in for a drink and be surrounded by sports apes like us, just going bonkers. However, as soon as you go into that stadium, man, it just felt like a warm blanket. It was comfortable. Everywhere you went was nice. They had greeters at every staircase and escalator. Anywhere you went, there were people just being nice, get paid to be nice to you. Cup holders were really nice.
Only one complaint. No.
I don't like the name, first of all. Mercedes-Benz Stadium, that just does not have the same ring as Georgia Dome. I still love saying that.
The day and age, this is where we are.
I get it, but I don't love it. Everything else, I loved. Good on you.
I guess I'd rather it be Mercedes-Benz than Kia Arena. I don't know.
Call it MBS or something. I don't know. Whatever.
Gotcha.
Georgia Stadium.
The only complaint I have about the stadium, and this is a small one, but it is an important one, no shakers allowed in the building.
Oh, good grief. Well, that's for our safety, Bennett.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't bring your shakers for Alabama.
A lot of pom-pom deaths by the fans at football matches.
We went with a friend, Brandy. She brought her shakers that she said she had for a decade. Now, mind you, these things cost $1, but this is a tradition. It's not cowbells. Do you know what I'm saying? Which, for the record, I've seen plenty of cowbells in other NFL stadiums, like in Arlington, right? They figure it out. Cowbell, that's a legit weapon. Because you say, oh, yeah, it's still a cowbell. These things are on sticks, and they're huge. Some of them are a couple feet long, right? Legitimately a weapon.
Weapons.
Shakers have plastic handles, folks. I
Not
say plastic
weapons.
handles. It's not even a handle. It's just a stick. It's a long chopstick.
They said you could remove the stick and you could bring it in.
And I saw an awful lot of
Defensive
that
purpose.
yesterday, by the way, and it just looked silly because, number one, it looks dumb. Number two, there were so few people with them that you just couldn't get anything done. Somebody
That's
tried
the
to
only
start a
complaint I
wave.
could
It
have
didn't
about
work.
the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That's the only complaint I would have. Other than that, a fantastic weekend for college football.
That's a complaint against the 21st century, in my opinion. We're just so scared and sensitive. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to real threats out there, but Shakers aren't one of them.
Touche.
Okay. I get not having glass. Shakers, though, let me have it.
Let the fans have it.
Let me have it. Roll Tide.
Let me have it.
Go Tigers. Oh, I want to talk with you real quick because we haven't about the Heisman. Okay?
Okay.
We talked a little bit about it yesterday,
We did.
and I feel I have to mention we haven't seen Jalen Hurts play yet this weekend. I'm kind of still leaning heavily towards for my Heisman for 2019. I think he's just good. If he has that fairy tale season, I don't know how. I don't think I could vote for anybody else. I think Tua might deserve it the most, and mostly because Trevor will probably get it next year too. Man, those three guys, they're right there. Tell you what, just throw a dart at any of them, and that's a good vote.
If the three of them get through the season unscathed as far as healthy and have 0 or 1 loss between them, I think they all end up in New York. But I think Jalen's got the edge on the story. Being a transfer from the University of Alabama, obviously, or maybe not so obviously, but there is no Alabama fan that has anything but love for Jalen Hurts. He's an excellent man, a man of character. He's shown it time and time again off the field.
I love him.
This guy has proven to be just an outstanding person in every aspect, and one who has found his way through a lot of trials and tribulations and has landed himself literally the perfect spot. He's in an offense that's going to be tailored perfectly for how he likes to move. He likes to run. He likes to swing the ball. He's certainly learned to develop as a pocket passer last year. That combined with the offense that they're going to run at Oklahoma, that combined with the defenses that they're going to face in the Big 12.
Yep.
And it's Oklahoma. It's kind of the Heisman capital of college football.
It is right now, that's for
They
sure.
know how to push guys onto that program. They know what it takes to get the stat lines, to get the PR, and to get their guy. At the end of the day, it's always the story. And
That's
I think
the argument, though,
Jalen
right?
has such a good story. They're going to make that interview, and he interviews really well. They're going to look into his life, and it's nothing but promise. And they're going to look at his story, particularly as it pertains to college football, and leaving Nick Saban and the program that is Alabama to go to Oklahoma, find his new home in his last opportunity. If he's in New York against those three, and it's a similarly level playing field as far as stats, I don't see how he doesn't win based on his story alone.
I don't know how you call it between any of those three. I think it's that last game leading up to it is gonna matter the most. And
Always
it's-
does.
If it's those three guys, it's probably going to be Tua against Georgia, right? That's a big game. And it would also be Jalen Hurts against Texas.
Could
and
be.
if they win both of those games, wow, that's huge. However, I think that weekend is just going to matter so much. You know?
It always does. You're exactly right. And that was me saying all things
Mattered
being
last
even.
year?
It's those losses, those games are so heavily weighted towards the end of the season, and particularly for this award more than any other, they're really heavily weighted. So you're right. As far as
Often,
predicting specifically, that adds up and the level of predictions that you have to make. But my point is, if they're in New York and all things are basically equal, they've each won their conference, regardless of who they played in their conference championship game.
Well, they have it, though, right?
Yeah.
They have a conference
They do.
championship game.
They do.
Oklahoma
Finally.
didn't until last year.
They finally have
did,
one.
and it got them not only into the playoff, it also got them a Heisman.
Yeah.
One game. It was a tremendous game in spite of the fact that we knew it was going to be a rematch. You can't take the fun out of this sport, people. Not to me, no way, no how. Can't wait for that game.
Yeah.
Except that I wish it would wait.
Just wait. Just slow everything down.
Week 1 is still going on, and I'm already apprehensive about week 13. So.
Gosh, we still have a couple of really big football games to watch left in this holiday weekend,
It's
in this
crazy to think about.
truly opening weekend of college football.
I want to say it's overwhelming, but it's really not. I'll take it all. Just let me have it.
Let me have it.
We're sitting here talking, doing a podcast instead of watching football.
That's right.
But I don't think there's any going on.
Nothing yet.
Can we talk about the race? just want to say real quick, congratulations to Charles Leclerc for his first win at Ferrari at Spa-Francorchamps.
Tifosi.
Couldn't have been a better place. What's his name? Antoine Hubert. Antoine Hubert. Rest in peace. He died. He hit the wall, I guess, I don't know what happened, to be honest. But in Formula 2 on Saturday, he was 22 years old. He was a friend of Charles Leclerc who won the race, and the first thing he did was point to the dedication to him. The first thing he said was the race was meant for him. When they brought out the champagne, they didn't really celebrate. They took a sip and walked away. I love Ferrari. I love cultural mentalities of it's win or bust. I love Maurizio Arrivabene saying, if a Ferrari's not winning a race, it's not a Ferrari. I love teams in college football who also have that identifying program, right? And I think you get that from places like Ohio State and certainly Alabama and Clemson. And I like that method of thinking. There's a few coaches out there who don't promote that kind of stuff, that's for sure, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But the elite teams this year, it looks like, are all led by good men, good coaches, and good players on those teams to lead the other guys.
It's fun to see the teams that we already predict to be elite, but I think there's some coming back that are going to be elite again. I think Texas is part of that conversation. I think
Georgia
that
State
game next week with certainly not Tennessee is anywhere near that conversation, but I think Texas could jump back into the forefront of college football again. I think we've already seen they're well on their way, and if they can notch a win against LSU in a huge matchup in Austin next week, I think they're really going to be a part of that conversation. We talked about Oklahoma with Jalen Hurts transferring. That really becomes an epic matchup, as it is every year. Everybody loves that rivalry, but
what's it called?
Those two teams, I don't even know what we're allowed to call it now. Let's just call it the Fair.
The Red River. What is it? Red River rivalry. It's actually the Red River Shootout, right?
It was,
which is easier to say.
Much easier, but much less politically correct.
We're going to call the podcast The Rivalry. Did you know that?
No.
TheRivalry.com is available. Somebody
offended.
else go out there and get it. Offended?
I'm
Why?
offended.
Well, we're going to be
language.
talking about more things than college football. I went with the Gray Zone, long story short, because I didn't find it in any college football podcast database, in any database for podcasts at all. Publish it, next thing you know, there's 3 of them up there already, and they're political too.
Let's not get political.
So if you're listening to this hoping for crime drama and politics talk, I apologize, but thank you for listening. You've been here for a long time, and now you're a fan, so hit that subscribe button, share it, and go to irongreenville.net and make your picks, and try to compete with me. You can try. I feel really confident this year already, because I usually struggle so bad in week 1, but man, I tell you what a blast this first week has been. It has been so much fun. I think you've seen, last year Nebraska with their home opener with Scott Frost there for the first time got rained out. And you also had UCF, their only Power 5 conference game, rained out. Instead, this year you get perfect weather, it seemed like, from coast to coast. Even Florida State, they had a hurricane, so they moved the game and had a game and ended up losing to Boise State at home. So I'll give them that. But you also had the Memphis Tigers beating Ole Miss. And stuff that you didn't get to. Now, again, that's the only ranked team. I'm sorry, ranked. That's the only Power 5 team that
Memphis,
the Memphis Tigers play all year. And I love it all. I'm so glad it's here, and I've had such a blast this weekend. I love Joey Galloway. I love Jesse Palmer. I love Kirk Herbstreit. I love Chris Fowler. I love all those guys.
Les Miles is back.
Les Miles is
back, and he got a win.
I love Maria and David.
He squeaked out a win at Kansas. And in traditional Les Miles
I love
stature.
I love
so
Holly
great.
Rowe. I haven't seen Holly Rowe all weekend, but man, I saw her for the week leading up to week 0. And she's a national treasure. I love all of these people. I'm so happy to hear them in my ear again.
Mac Brown back on the sideline, getting emotional.
I miss Mark May. Now
Les
everybody's
Miles
triggered.
doing his thing. I wonder who's going to be... Now that we're done with week 1, do we start talking hot seat for, I don't know, at least Jeremy Pruitt?
I don't know.
I
don't know what
people
to think
who might have
gonna
been
do
talking
with
about the
anything.
hot seat for Gus Malzahn at Auburn are definitely not talking about it right now.
Not today. Yeah, and shout out to my buddy Jason Long. It's his birthday today. War Eagle, buddy. What a win. That was great. I don't know what to expect from them the rest of the year. I think we certainly haven't seen their ceiling. A guy like Bo Nix could be an X factor for them, but I don't know yet. I don't think we can tell yet. I also don't think we can tell if Oregon's that bad. I saw Auburn make more mistakes than Oregon, I think. So I don't know what it means, but it sure doesn't mean anything other than it won't be boring. I think it's an exciting year of football we're up for sure.
I'm always curious to see what that hot seat turns into. We do make our predictions preseason on who's going to be where preseason, and as it always turns out, the coaching carousel lights up towards the end of October or so.
Nick Saban got a penalty yesterday. Is he on the hot seat?
No, I don't think he's going anywhere.
Have you heard a crowd boo like that before? Then Alabama fans booing for the refs throwing a penalty against Nick Saban, who was just out there saying, the kids are having fun. Let them have fun.
Yeah, and they were having fun, but regardless.
And I get it, and people will boo for that too. And I tell you what, like I said before, it's one side of the coin or the other. But man, both of those sides are white hot. Everybody's on one or the other. Everybody's really loud.
Orgeron was in talks for being on the hot seat if he couldn't get things together. Well, yeah. Again, he's got a couple years in. Played terribly against Alabama last year, which
LSU's broke. We won't get into that right now. That's too much.
They're already starting off very well. Again, next week is kind of everything for them as far as momentum going into the rest of the season, getting into the SEC slate that they have to play. Mm-hmm. If they can beat Texas, they jump frog. They are in the talks to be in the college football playoff. Again, it's early, but they're in that conversation. If Texas beats LSU, they start jumping into that conversation. They'll be a top 5 ranked program. And it's so exciting because this is now we're finally starting to learn. We're finally going to have clear, concrete data. Yes, it's only week 1. It's a lot of sloppy play out there. Everybody's kind of getting their wheels under them. But we have a full week of data on all of the teams. And next week, we're going to have even more data on even more teams playing good programs. Now we get into it. Now we can really start to see who's ranked right, who's not ranked right, and how well we're going to look forward to the rest of the season and see how this is going to play out. See who's going to be with the positions that they're at now. See who's going to get fired. See what teams are going to get hot. See who's going to start to become talks and discussions of winning their divisions, if not their conferences. I'm just glad it's here, man. It's so exciting. It's so much fun, and it was fun all day yesterday. It's a good point. I didn't think about it until you mentioned it, Gray. I don't think we saw any weather across the country yesterday. We know we've got the hurricane coming up.
Yeah.
But I didn't see, from east to west, I didn't see any rain. I didn't see any games rained out. Maybe somebody can check Google and I'm missing something. But it looked like...
I don't think so.
God opened the gates and said, let there be football. And
yeah, it's true.
It was great.
You know, most years you have teams like Prairie View and Rice and Hawaii start the season and nobody watches. And then the next week you have everybody else say, this is week 1, and they go nuts. But you also have weather problems. And yeah, to have it all happen on a weekend without those problems, and it's Labor Day. And like you said, we've still got more football to go, including Oklahoma and Notre Dame. So it's hard to beat, man. You can't ask for much more from week 1, especially with the teams at the top.
Let's go.
Let's go. You got anything else you want to say?
That's all I want to say. Roll Tide, go
I was about to
Tigers.
say, I knew you
Ready
wanted to
for
say that.
more good football. And yeah, let's go. It's football time.
Don't whisper it, by the way.
I'm finally glad to be here. It always takes so long, and now it's here, and I don't want it to end. And I'm just enjoying this Sunday of soaking it in and knowing that we have more coming up today, knowing that we have more coming up tomorrow, and knowing that next week already has so much promise for really great matchups that are going to dictate how these seasons play out for 4, if not many more top programs. It's fun.
Real quick, 3 seconds. Pick your top 4, your playoff teams.
Clemson, Alabama, Texas, Georgia. I know that's kind of a weird one saying that Alabama and Georgia could both be in there, but I really think that they could.
We don't have time for me to go into that, okay? Because that's not happening.
Then I'll take Ohio State. If Fields continues to look the way that he does and they don't find a way to lose to an Indiana or Purdue, I think it's Ohio State.
Purdue had good. Now you're taking my advice, so way to go.
Right. Clemson, Ohio State, Bama, Texas.
I.O. Thanks, bro. Love you, man. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Go Tigers. See y'all. Oh, by the way, F you once, F you twice, F you all the time. Furman with a big win. Keeping the ball on the ground. They didn't do it enough last year. Go Dins. See y'all.
Not red, not blue, not white, not green, just